Grabando aquí. Toma 3 o 4 de corte. Okay.
When you're ready, Charles.
Okay. I would like to talk about Protestantism, scientism, and capitalism. And Max Weber has written much about the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, and I'd like to discuss that briefly. One of the great schisms that broke out in the world was between sort of Anglo-Catholic organicism and Puritan atomistic individualism. The Catholics and the Anglo-Catholics felt that we were all sort of organically related, and the Puritans said no, on the contrary, we were responsible for our own virtue, we were on our own, and we were directly responsible to God. And the Catholics believed in communal mediated relationships, and the Puritans believed that there was direct access to God via the Bible. We appeared before him, we were responsible to him, and we were responsible one by one. As Kipling said, the sins that we do by two and two we pay for one by one. And that therefore we had direct access and audience to God via the Bible. And the Catholics believed in salvation through the community, through the whole community, addressing God as a community. And the Protestants believed that we had private direct relationships. God spoke to us exclusively because we were saint-like or whatever it was. The Catholics believed that God intervened in the world, that he was there, that he created miracles. And the Protestants said, no, God has delegated. He's delegated himself to nature. The world goes on. God is at arm's length. He stands back. If we experience God at all, we experience God through the workings of nature, and that's how we should understand God. And the Catholics believed in salvation through communion, salvation, and the Puritans believed in salvation through work. The Catholics believed that we had to prepare ourselves for the next world, and the Protestants said, no, it is in this world, it's building God's kingdom in this world that is important. So you begin to see that the Protestant nations were the first to develop economically. If you look at Britain and America, if you looked at the Protestant nations of Northwest Europe, they took first off economically, and I think Weber was right that it was the image of God as demanding from us work to prove our individual worth. It was this that caused early industrial development. It doesn't necessarily call later industrial development. As things get more complicated and as we participate more and more in each other's work, I think possibly communion helps us catch up, and a lot of the countries now developing faster are communal, are community-based ethos. China especially, and Japan, both based on community. So I think the individualism, which was very helpful in the early stages of capitalism, is not as helpful now as it was. And when it comes to mobilizing everybody for economic development, I think images and communion and relationships very much come into their own and change the equation.
Nice.
Es como estar en una masterclass.
Yeah.
Right, you want me to go straight on?
As you wish.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the limited energy model of Sigmund Freud. I think the greatness of Freud was that he responded to the dilemma of his age, of his time. There was, in Victorian Europe, a terrible repression of sexual impulse. It didn't mean that sexual impulse was not expressed, that children were not born, but it was driven underground and found many perversions, as in the English obsession with flagellation and other things like that. And women became hysterical partly because men were chasing them, and they suffered from hysteria, which is no longer a symptom, very much a symptom in psychiatry at all. It was created by predatory men and the women pretending to be blind or dumb or deaf or whatever it was. They didn't want to hear. So he responded really to the anomaly of his age, to the contradiction of his age, that people repressed their sexual feeling. I don't think he was right that sex is the great driver of the world. I think at that time sex was so repressed it became a major driver. The more you repress something, the more it rears its ugly head. The more the unconscious suddenly breaks through the exterior pretense and disgraces you all. And I think he was brilliant at that. But there were limitations, and one of them was that we're always falling in love with the latest mechanism we've created. And if you think about Freud, he's very like a Victorian steam engine. Okay, you've got coal in the boiler, you've got the boiler heating water, you've got the steam coming out and propelling the id is very like the steam, and the superego is very like the engine covering it and fueling it, etc., etc. And it is the tension between the boiler inside us and the steam coming out that propels human motivation. And I don't really think it helps to liken the human psyche to a mechanism. So although Freud, I think, was brilliant for his time, and while he opened up a whole very, very important subject about looking into the depth of the human psyche, I think he was mistaken in his image of a limited energy model letting off steam like a steam engine.
Just give me one moment to move this a little bit.
Está bien, no,
This is good.
está bien, está
No,
bien.
look, this is even better. Look, you see how now it starts in this corner and finishes in that corner?
Oh,
It wasn't like that.
Now, yes.
Now it's like...
No. Oh, this is...
talking about. Nice. Brilliant.
Stay with the timing, yeah? Well, okay.
Yeah, we're good already. Timing.
You see it's like 25 or something like that. Stop and bueno, stop when she finish.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, Lawrence, está bien la silla. Voy a matar.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten the fourth function of Jung's fourth function. What is? Can you remember what it is? It's thinking, feeling.
Intuiting?
It's intuition, sensation, thinking, feeling, extrovert, introvert. But there has to be another one, and I've forgotten what it is. You'd think it was here. I can't.
Can I have a quick look? If I scan it thinking, sensation, feeling, intuition, the 4 functions. Yeah, here's the 4 functions.
Well,
Sensation, thinking, intuition, feeling.
oh, I see.
Conscious, unconscious, the 4
No,
functions.
but there's extroversion and introversion. That makes 3, and there has to be a 4th.
Extroversion, introversion, here, the 4 functions on that. TSFI. Yeah, so it is, the 4 functions are thinking, intuition, feeling, and sensation.
Okay.
And then you also have extroversion, introversion, which is a different axis.
Okay.
Otherwise, don't worry, if you're not feeling young, then...
Okay. Well, no, he's important, and I have something to say.
I'm just going to do one last thing. What's this? Pocket of light. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something about the dynamic unities of Carl Gustav Jung, because in many ways he too tackled the dilemma of his age, or the dilemma of his time, and especially it was a very personal dilemma, because his father was a religious pastor and by all means quite dominating in his life, and Jung desperately wanted to be a scientist, and his effort to reconcile himself with his father was that he wanted to create a psychology that included religion, and his work shows really remarkable insight into that, and unfortunately Jung comes down to us via the Myers-Briggs indicator. When the Second World War began, the Myers-Briggs indicator was given to virtually every American who was drafted for the war, and so nearly everybody knows their Myers-Briggs indicator. They from 1940 onwards, most Americans know where they stand on that indicator. But sadly, it was the Americanization of Jung, because they took his 4 functions, like thinking, feeling, and intuition. Damn it. They took his 4 functions, like sensation, intuition, thinking, feeling, and they made them opposites. You either think or you feel, or you either look at objects sensationally, or you intuit the meaning of objects. But these are not opposites. And if you look at Jung's basic work, he took the yin-yang extremely seriously. In fact, he used the model in his book. And he sees human beings as endlessly moving between thinking and feeling. First feeling, because you feel angry, and there's a good reason for feeling angry, or you feel suspicious, and there's often a good reason for feeling suspicious, or you feel joyous, and there's very, very good reason for feeling joyous, because you're coming up with something, you're creating something is welling up inside you. So follow your feeling and think about it, think about your feeling. So it is the fusion of thinking and feeling. It is the fusion of intuiting something and then checking up on the object that you've intuited, labeling the object, codifying the object, looking at the object. So these are not opposites at all, they are fusions, and Jung saw these intertwined and growing together in the human mind, just as the libido and the collective unconscious grew together. So Jung was a great synthesist. And religion, of course, comes from the word religare, to bind together, and religion binds us together, and Jung's original philosophy binds us together. And I wouldn't take the Myers-Briggs so seriously. I'd look at the original Jung. That is most important.
Great.
I'd like to talk about the solitary solidary. The solitary solidary. The existentialism from Kierkegaard to Camus. Existentialism was really born, I think, out of the terrible, terrible disillusion as a result of World War II. We couldn't have conceived that people would behave towards other people with such appalling brutality, that so many Frenchmen would collude with the Nazi regime and send their fellow French to a concentration camp. So it was almost a loss of belief in human nature, that human nature is something outside us that can be learned from and improved. The sort of progressive optimism that held up to that time. We'd been through World War I with terrible, terrible massacres where defence was master of attack and millions of people died in waste and futility and stupidity. And then we get World War II, which is, if anything, even more a nightmare because totally innocent people are murdered before our daydreaming eyes. And existentialism was a revolt against this notion that nature was out there and could be infinitely improved on. On the contrary, existence was within us, values were within us. And the very fact that we detested World War II, the very fact that we revolted against its cruelty, the very fact that it enraged us was experience that we were alive. In the seventh seal, death comes in the shape of a ghostly figure. Anybody he touches, he kills, and the hero plays chess with death and defies him in every moment he has left. And it is the desire to assert yourself, the desire to live, the desire to have your values defeat or fight or against the inevitability, the absurdity of death. Here we are, what the hell are we doing here? We're going to go into our graves, worms are going to eat us, we're going to crumble to nothing. It is as if our present existence defies the oncoming omnipresence of death. And Kierkegaard said we live in a state of absurdity. We are alive knowing we will die. We have a being in the face of nothingness. And this total absurdity and contradiction faces us. And Camus tells some wonderful stories. One of my favourite stories of Camus is The Dying Artist. This artist is dying and he draws, paints a beautiful picture. It's the last picture he's ever going to paint. And people come and look at it and admire it after his death. And he signed it with the word solidary, except some people say it's not solidary, it's solitary, with a D, not a T. And I think Camus is asking us to see that it's both at the same time, that out of our solitary rebellion, out of our defiance of death, out of our determination to be of some significance, even though we're going to cease to exist very soon, out of that comes solidarity with all mankind. So man rebels, but he rebels in favour of humanity, he rebels in favour of mercy, he rebels in favour of compassion. And out of that compassion, other people will continue to live and you can pass on your life force to other people.
That was amazing, Charles. Lau, could you just come and check that the focus is right? It's probably fine because nothing has been touched, but maybe I'm just going a bit paranoid.
It's okay.
Everything's good? Nice.
Mm.